Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the video. Today we are going back to drum sounds. A friend of mine, Morgan Nelson, records drum covers and posts them here on YouTube, and he sent me this session to kind of get a second opinion on his mix and his edits. And so with his permission, I'm going to go through the session and talk about some things that could be improved and some common issues I come across when I'm mixing drums. This video ended up being a lot longer than I originally thought, so I split it into multiple parts. This first part is going to be all the utility stuff like gain staging and phase, and then after that we'll move on to EQ, compression, and all that other stuff. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified as I release these parts over the next couple weeks. I'll start off showing you what I got, and then I'll go from there. So we've got a kick, snare, some toms, some overheads, and this EAD10 mic. I'll get into that one a little more later. So here's the whole drum sound. So it's not bad, it's punchy. This is my version here to show you kind of where we're going to go by the end of the session. So that gives you an idea. I'll pop back to the original. So the first thing I like to do when I get a session that has other people's processing on it is I just bypass everything and kind of see where we started. You know, different people process things in different ways, and I like to just hear what the raw source material sounds like and start at the furthest point up the stream of making the audio sound good. So turning off all this, turning it off, turning it off. I've bypassed this send here. I've bypassed all the bus processing. We've just got mics now. And I'm also going to reset all the faders back to Unity. If you option click, they'll all jump back up. So now we can hear just what the mics sound like with nothing else going on. And the first thing I'm noticing is that all these are super hot. The snare and overheads especially are all hitting at 0 decibels, so they're about to peak. So what I'm going to do about this is go to each channel with a gain plugin and pull the gain down so that my channel is hitting at Unity, which is around -12. Okay, now our gain is a lot more controlled. We're going to start to look into phase. The very first thing I found in this session, I zoomed in really close to check the phase on everything. So when you zoom in close enough, eventually your waveforms will turn into these lines. And once you're there, you can kind of see that not everything is lining up. The snare needs to reach the overhead mics at the same time, or you're going to start to have some phasing issues. Phase cancellation can occur when the sound is reaching different mics at different times, and it actually causes you to lose some of the impact and power behind the sources. So if you look at this is when the sound reaches the first overhead, and it actually doesn't reach the second one for a few milliseconds later. So what I'm going to do is just drag this back to line up with the second one. The first phase issue I noticed was with the overheads. So on this snare hit, the snare was reaching the left side a few milliseconds before the right side. And so I actually just drug this back so that these two waveforms start at the same time. I usually like to line everything up with the snare because for the most part, the snare is what hurts the most if your drums aren't in phase. The kick drum is almost low enough that, at least to my ears, the phase doesn't affect it as much, but the snare and toms are definitely a big one. So all these close mics I will drag so they line up roughly the same, and that should get us a really good starting point. So now we can see that for the most part, our waveforms are going up and down at the same time. And that's a good practice for avoiding phase cancellation. It's not going to completely fix it, and there's still some work to be done with the phase flip button, but this is definitely something to check, especially if you're not the one who tracked the drums and you don't know for sure how the phase was going in. It's good to check this. So basically what you do with the phase invert button, I just press it in a bunch of different combinations until I hear the sound that is the fullest. So I will start with the snare and then I'll start messing with the overheads as well. So here's without the phase flip, and then here's with it. Hear how it kind of got thinner right there? So we definitely want to leave that not inverted. We could do the same thing on the overheads just to confirm they're in phase with each other, although I know they are because we zoomed in and looked at the waveform. Hear how the snare, and you can hear it with the floor tom too, gets a lot thinner when I flip the phase. So now these two mics are out of phase and they're causing what's called phase cancellation, where audio waves are basically bumping into each other and canceling stuff out, and it's making your sound come across as thinner. So since we have a floor tom there, I'm going to bring that into the mix as well, and then we'll flip this phase and make sure this is hitting right. So when it's flipped, it gets quieter, so we definitely want that not flipped. Let me find a spot with the other toms so we can check there. Here's a spot. So the first one. So thinner with the flip. Next one. So it sounds like all the toms are in phase. That's excellent. Next, we can check the kick, although this one is the hardest to hear, in my opinion. So this actually sounds like it has more punch when the phase is flipped. I want to look at it and just see what's going on. So these are in phase, the EAD10. It is interesting to note, however. So these look like they start and go down. See how the waveforms start and dip first and then go up? So when we flip the phase, we're essentially reversing the order of this. So the kick will start down and go up. So this one gives us kind of more low mid punch. I'm going to leave it with that. And so now I'm going to bring in this EAD10. And I might need to flip the phase on this. Yep. So hear how that added a lot more punch. And now we just want to confirm that our EAD10 is in phase with our snare. So this is interesting because they're almost backwards. Oh, this is an interesting challenge, actually. So because the EAD10 is a kind of a multi-mic source, in other words, like he's got the kick trigger and then the mic that's on the EAD10, I don't know if there's anything we can do about that kick being phase flipped. So what we might need to do is just roll off the low end so it's not competing with the phase of the kick as much, because there's no combination of phase here that we'd be able to do that would make this be in phase with the kick and the snare. So let's just make sure it sounds good with the snare. Okay, back to the kick. Yeah, so I'm just going to roll off. I'll put my own EQ. Just get rid of the lows on this because we're going to use the kick mic for most of the lows anyway. This EAD10 is going to be for more texture and almost like a mono room mic. So that helps with our phase issue there. Now everything is in phase, everything is dialed in with the gain, so this is kind of where I like to start. And if I'm the one recording the drums, I try to get it like this going in the box, although it's not always easy. You know, you do your best and then you make it better as you go. That wraps up part 1 on gain staging and phase. I'll be posting these over the next couple weeks, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified when the next part comes out. As always, thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next one.